What I want my meeting planner crew right now to know is that they can turn any situation around. Instead of shrinking from the situation, you're responsible to yourself, you're responsible to your team, you're responsible to that organization that we're working for in this moment. Or if you're trying to grow the marketing for your business, whatever that situation or that thing is, how do we focus on the what, on the why we're here, and who we're supporting? Because at the end of the day, that's what brings us through.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Keynote Curators podcast. I'm Seth Dechtman, your Keynote Curator, and our very, and I mean very special guest today is Vernice, FlyGirl Armour. Vernice, welcome to the podcast.
Great to be here. Great to be here, Seth.
It truly is great to have you. I am thrilled, enthralled, excited, ecstatic to have you on our podcast. Where does the podcast find you today?
I am in hot Atlanta, which is not so hot in the moment, which is why I have my little jacket on. Number one, I'm cold, but number two, it's great for the branding. So let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. And Atlanta is your home, your current home. Is that right?
Yeah, I've been here for 8 years, 8.5 years now. Yep, moved here when my daughter was 5 weeks old.
So it's been a while.
It
And,
has.
you know, we've worked together and your energy is amazing. I've been really excited to have you on the calendar and finally you're here. You know, I've heard you describe, but I'll describe you. Amazing, inspirational storyteller,
Thank you.
educator, badass, trailblazer for not only women, but anybody and everybody who has a pulse and is a human being on planet Earth, and a history making, mission focused, total package.
Okay, so I just need to take you with me to introduce me everywhere I go. That's the bottom line on that one.
I can do it. Let's do it. So, Fly Girl, V, as I know you say your friends call you V.
Sure.
Our listeners are mostly meeting professionals, which you know intimately. I call them part of our tribe, part of our band. You know, we don't need the whole thing, but whatever captures you in the moment, knowing that these are meeting professionals and anybody working in the meeting ecosystem, whether it's vendors, tech people, AV people. You were a police officer, you were first Black woman combat pilot, a diversity liaison officer to the Pentagon, a best-selling author, business consultant, entrepreneur, and I want to say badass. Did I repeat myself? So
yeah, that sounded pretty cool though.
It did. I mean, I think out of all those things, that's probably top of the list. A lot of those are highlights in themselves, but given that you know our audience, what is it that you want to highlight or share with them to get to know you a little bit better, get under the hood, or lift the veil a little bit more?
You know, my goal is to have a down-to-earth conversation today, and I don't want it to sound crazy or like markety, but honestly, my entire life has been about servant leadership. Whether it was wanting to be a police officer since I was 4 years old, becoming that police officer, working for a couple different departments, Nashville Police Department, Tempe Police Department, first woman of color to ride motors for the Nashville Police Department, first Black woman on the Tempe Police Department, which is crazy, right? That was in 1988. And then moving on to the Marine Corps and becoming the first there and making those accomplishments. I was never going out to be first. I just wanted to live an amazing, epic, juicy life. What I believe is relevant so much now, and it feels timeless. I didn't know how to do the things I wanted to do. I decided on what I wanted, what the vision was, what the goal was, right? And then I said, okay, what do I have to do to create the resources and the plan? And so many times I see people now, especially in business, try to figure out how before sometimes the what. It's like, well, what do we have the capability to do? And then let's go for that versus what do we really want as a team? What do we really want as an organization? And then boom, okay, let's figure out the how and create the path and get there.
Yeah.
And sometimes, that means taking a risk, a thoughtful risk.
Yeah.
Can't go into combat and not think there's going to be a risk, but there's a huge payoff. So at the end of the day, what's our payoff? So I think that's what I would want meeting planners to know. My life has been about innovation. It's been about being gutsy. It's been about making bold moves, accomplishing the mission. And at the end of the day, friends, family, my neighbors, my community were the people I was showing up for every day.
Your
Even now,
tribe,
my tribe. That's right. I call it my crew,
crew.
right? Air crew, but
Yeah, for
my
sure.
ground crew,
Flight crew, ground crew.
right?
There's a lot to unpack there, and I do want to do a deep dive, and I want this to be a natural conversation, which it is, the gutsy part, but something that you say kind of with some facility, with ease, but I want to underscore it a little bit because I think, meeting planners who have big visions and big goals in their career, with their organization, with meetings themselves, where they have a vision. And then how do you get from where you are and what you have to have that plan to get there?
Right.
Sometimes in life, on a personal level, we have big dreams, big aspirations. We begin to set our plan and it almost seems insurmountable. And that possibility and what's possible and that pathway to the possible becomes so overwhelming, an avenue for resignation. What do you say to our crew, our tribe, for those that get inspired, get lit up, get touched, get moved, get inspired, and then they see that there's so much to do and so much to overcome and so much unreasonableness and so much risk and guts involved that they shrink in front of it? What would you say to that? And it might be foreign to you. It might
No,
be
no,
foreign to
no,
you.
no, no. I was thinking, I was trying not to laugh because I said, that reminds me of a story. Speakers, we got stories.
Right? No, I was going to say just one story.
Well, yeah, more than one. But this one really stands out. And it kind of has the essence of what you're talking about when you get caught in that moment of challenge, barrier, what feels insurmountable. And I was a new speaker. And I was on stage for an ITISS, which is IT, internet security, like the big thinkers, right?
Mhm.
And I just remembered at a certain point, the lights were beaming down, they were hot, sweat was rolling. I was thinking, I am bombing. And I could not wait. I just started speaking faster and faster. It was the longest hour of my life. And then when I got off the stage, I went over to the side and I tried to find a corner to hide in. And then afterwards, people were coming up to me and saying, "Oh my God, that was so good." I was like, "No, it's not. You're just saying that because it was so hard, but you're just trying to make me feel better." Right. And what I got from that moment in such a big way, and one of my mentors shared this with me, I'm responsible to, not responsible for, right? Responsible
Mm,
to the audience, not responsible for the audience, because
mhm.
anything could have happened. Their boss might have had a heart attack and everybody's thinking about it. It could have been the day after 9/11. I have speaker friends that went through that. And what happened in that moment is my energy shrunk and my voice shrunk instead of giving the audience more and more and more to fill that gap to capture them to bring me with me.
Mm,
So in that moment, it was the biggest gift that could have ever happened to me having that moment at the very beginning of my career. I've been speaking now for 16 years because I know without a shadow of a doubt, I can turn any audience around. And what I want my meeting planner crew right now to know is that they can turn any situation around. Instead of shrinking from the situation, you're responsible to yourself, you're responsible to your team, you're responsible to that organization that we're working for in this moment. Or if you're trying to grow the marketing for your business, whatever that situation or that thing is, how do we focus on the what, on the why we're here and who we're supporting? Because at the end of the day, that's what brings us through. When I'm out there on that platform, it's not about me and, oh, I'm the greatest. And many times before I even go out, I said, give me what they need to hear, not what I wanna say. Because at the end of the day, that's what they need to hear, not what I wanna say,
right.
right?
And that's the what you
Yeah.
said earlier, your life of service, and that 2 versus 4, while it could be viewed superficially as just semantics. It really is a
Right.
distinction of one where you're empowering yourself and you're saying, okay, I prepared, I'm doing my level best. But part of that being in tune, if you realize you're bombing, don't feed into that. What can I do
Right.
to fill that gap? What can I do to unbomb?
That's
Uh,
exactly right. That's exactly right. And how you read a situation, how do you see it before it's here, right? When I go and get ready for an audience now, I'm doing sound check. I get there early. It's in my writer that I want to do it 90 minutes before. And hopefully sound check doesn't last more than 15 minutes. Then I
right.
grab my coffee and I'm walking around just like the event we were at together, right? I'm
That's right.
taking selfies and giving hugs and we're going to see the bees and checking out, some of the sites and the people and getting a feel for the room, getting a feel for the people, getting a feel for the event. And it's in that moment, because I never do a canned talk, right? Where I decide how I'm going to start out, what story I'm going to share, and what's that connective tissue between me and the audience, right?
Yeah.
When I was speaking for FedEx, I remember talking to my girlfriend. I was in combat and she wanted to send me something. And I remember thinking, yeah, it takes a letter like a month to get here. It's going to be forever for a package. 3 days later, out of nowhere, they call my name. I go down, I get this package, and this is huge box, right? Just it has all kinds of stuff in it. I love sweet tea. It had tea bags, it had
Oh,
sugar, which was probably what 5 pounds just a bag of sugar alone, right? Who knew how much it cost to ship this package? And there was even dip in there to bribe the guys in my squad
ooh,
if I needed to. I
ooh.
know. It was a total flip. And I looked out at that audience of FedEx folks and I said, "You have no idea
Mm,
how much that meant to me in that moment, receiving what felt like a box of love,
yeah.
right, from my family." And I looked at them and I said, "When it absolutely, positively has to get there," right?
Yeah.
And as
Yeah.
I'm saying it, they start saying it with me,
Yeah.
right? So if I go to the National Plumbers Association, I can never tell that story. That's
No.
that's their story. That's our connected story together, right? So I always try to find that connection and that bond that brings us together. And the coolest part is I know there's always a way for me to bring an audience around with the personal connection, period,
Yeah.
right? Because that's what connects us.
I've seen it firsthand. And you mentioned an event that we were recently at in California. And we took a little stroll after the sound check. We had a little bit of free time. And, I said, hey, did you have a chance to go? We went up to the veranda, we took a selfie and everything. And on the way back, they were beekeeping.
Right,
And, we stopped and actually read a little bit of the info, which you could walk by 20 times if you're in a conversation or you're
right.
focused or you're on the phone or whatever. And you took a piece of data, a bee, what was it,
5
million,
grams,
yeah,
5
5
grams.
grams in their lifetime for us to
Yes,
have a teaspoon of honey, and how
honey.
you built that into what are we working? What is the 5 grams of honey that we're developing, and how are we putting that out for everybody to consume or get their alimentation or their nutrition from? And it wasn't planned, and that's thinking on your feet. And I'm not just stroking you unauthentically, Vernice. I am a hard grader. I am. And no, really, I am. I was a school teacher
Yeah.
for 6 years. I'm a hard grader on myself. I mean, I do have, there is a coherent humanness to it. But when the earthquake happened,
Ah,
and I said this to Tony, and I'll say this to you, everybody's phone, there was an earthquake. For those in our tribe listening, in
right.
the middle of Vernice, in the middle of V's presentation, like smack dab in the
Yes.
middle, there was an earthquake, and
All the
everybody's
phones went off. They
all the
were like
phones
Amber
went,
Alert. Yeah,
"Woo,"
yeah.
and Vernice, in a very natural, organic voice, goes, "Is that an Amber Alert?" And the room's kind of, I wouldn't say going sideways, but a little bit chaotic or just a little bit swirly. And you pull the phone out, you had your phone on you, and you go, "No, it's not Amber Alert, it's an earthquake." And
Right.
you weren't like lighthearted about it. You go, "Are we all good? Everybody good?" And then you go, "What floor are we on?" And we were kind of like, "Oh, we're on the first floor. All right, we're good." Right?
Right.
Which brings a little, I mean, gosh, it's an
Levity
earthquake,
to the moment.
whimsy to it, right? You brought everybody back in. But here's what I noticed. Apart from you absolutely not losing the tone of your voice, the naturalness, the organicness of who you are, the authenticity of who you are, let's throw every word in the soup there. The room came back, albeit for a little bit on the edges, V, and you were present to it.
Mhm.
And so instead of retaking, where you left off, you were like, we're back. We're all good. And everybody kind of was with you, but there were a few, and you had to have everybody be there. And I'm making this up, whether it was conscious or not, and whether you remembered or not, but you put in that tornado story when you were in a
Right.
refuge.
Yep.
And it was kind of like consciously addressing there's a natural disaster going
Right.
on, you relating to it, not deviating from your message,
Mhm.
but you talk about reading the situation and bringing
Mm.
that all back together, right? And the connective tissue.
Right.
And then the room, as you, whenever you determine for your internal measurement and your internal read, like when you're in combat,
Right.
the room pulled back in. We carried on with the guts and the core virtues of your story, and it was beautiful.
Oh, thank
So I just have seen the connective tissue being built live in person, and it was just extraordinary for me to be a
Yes.
part of it.
I appreciate you. Thanks, Seth. It's like being a cop, right? My first couple months on the street, everything was new. Everything was crazy. Everything was deep, right? I'd never experienced it before. And as a speaker, things were different or things were new or if the fire alarm went off, right? And with time, again, 16 years out here, you've experienced some things. You've had a fire alarm or fire drill or the tornado. And now when things happen, it's like when something happens in the room, you can't just ignore it and keep
Right.
walking. And everybody's their phone and they're looking around, right? So anytime something happens, I love it because it's almost like table topics and Toastmasters, right? Where you have to
That's
flip
right.
the paper out and then it's like on the paper it says a rock, and you have to make up a story about this rock, right? It's like walking down the street and I saw this amazing rock on the
Yeah.
right, and I'm just going on about something. So as soon as something like that happens, I love the impromptu-ness of it because now this is original content that they are now a part of the story, which makes it even more exciting, right?
Yeah.
So the first couple of alerts went off, but then everybody's phone went burr, burr. So at that moment, it's like, okay, time out, stop the action. What's happening? And we all got to create the moment together, right? Like,
Yeah.
how exciting is
Yeah.
that?
It's a gift, and it's not just, oh, the elephant in the room. It's really being able to dance with it and incorporate it and
Mhm.
utilize it.
Right,
And you
right.
know and in your talks, which are all tailored and personalized, you talk about dealing with interruptions, dealing with chaos, dealing with things
Yeah.
that are unpredictable. Talk a little bit about that and the work that you've done with meetings and meeting planners, and
Mhm.
how those virtues of being a police officer and being in combat and the teams that you've trained and worked with, and how that all
Mhm.
interplays.
Well, if you think about it, Seth, and I'm thinking about it in this moment too, everything I did was dealing with a huge challenge in life. As a cop, I'm responding to people's emergencies every day. As a combat pilot, I'm literally flying into the face of fire, supporting the men and women on the ground. Like, it's not a good day, right? And so many times people would say, was it hard? Was it challenging? Was it? And I remember at some point, I said, "Well, I mean, yeah, it was hard, but you have to acknowledge the obstacles. Don't give them power,
Right.
right?" And that's where that whole acknowledge the obstacles. That was my first. POV, point of view, my unique perspective that I was bringing to the marketplace of speaking, right? Because it was '07. Who knew I was starting my business in the middle of a recession, August '07, and that's what I came out with. And organizations were going through crazy town, right? They were trying to lean outward. It was the Great Recession, not the Depression, right? And it was
Right.
the housing market, and everything was going haywire. And the Iraq war was only 4 years old, so that was fresh too. So it was this, like, unique perspective with a message that they were looking for, incorporated with engagement, right? And the cleared hot, you have permission to engage came around 2010. So we were still in the thick of things, right? We hadn't really all the way recovered. And it was a message that organizations wanted their people to hear. Acknowledge the obstacles.
Yeah.
Don't give them power. And it was really, how do we find the solution? Focus on success. And it just ended up being wildly successful and a desired message, right? Because that's
Yeah.
what we want our people to do. Okay, yeah, we all got challenges, we all got problems. And how do we navigate to get to the other side? So I think my life literally prepared me, gave me, put in my lap the message that I have now to share with organizations, the blood running through my veins. No one wonders if I have the background to talk about courage or being
Right.
gutsy or going cleared hot, right? Or engaging in the midst of chaos and combat. Everybody knows combat is chaotic, right? Everybody knows combat is hard. So they want to know how I navigated, what principles did I use, what mind, like, concepts that I come up with to be able to maneuver in and out of those situations and be able to be successful.
It's right. It's a mindset. It's a mind kind of mindscape,
Yeah.
if you will. Yeah. And a lot, I would take the case that there are a lot of people out there that had that background, but then to be able to impart it, prepare, distill it, and deliver it in the way that you do, it's just extraordinary. And I'm not trying to make this a vehicle to just stroke you, but truly, I was thrilled and excited. And you can pay me later in cash off camera. Yeah.
But no,
I want
you bring up a point, right? That what I'm hearing you say a little bit, and I may be reading into it, because that was our very first booking together, wasn't it?
yeah.
Yeah. What you saw on paper and on my website, and honestly, I'm still trying to work this out, like 16 years in game, was different from what you experienced. Right. And
Wholeheartedly.
I'm still trying to figure out how to harness the magic in a video in a website,
Right.
because it's what I believe I do on stage is just so much more than what the words on the website
Yeah.
share.
It is. And first of all, it was our first one. It wasn't lack for trying and lack of trying for years. And
Mhm,
and there were a few cases where availability just was an issue, where
mhm,
I had gotten it across the goal line and we just couldn't get you from Nova Scotia
right,
to San Diego, as an exaggerated example. We couldn't
mhm,
get you from A to B
mhm,
based on availability.
right,
I think it is a challenge. The word sizzle or highlight reel is always I don't it's not a misnomer, but it's a highlight reel, right? Not like you want to put your lowlights in there, but what I'm saying is it's the best of the best. It's kind of like an Instagram post or a Facebook reel or whatever, it's the best of the best. How do you bridge that gap?
right.
Well, I think that is where you either get on the phone and have a conversation or a Zoom with V and me or both or either one, and you get more texture in person.
100%. And let's be honest. I mean, right now we're post George Floyd, right? When I first started out in '07, '08, I sometimes felt so discouraged because Black, I was a woman, was gay. I think the thing I felt was going for me was I was a vet, right? Because the war, and it was
Mhm,
different in aviation.
mhm.
Um, so quick story. names have been preserved to save the innocent. I've been booked for a meeting, and the bureau rep said, "Hey, I really had to fight for you on this one. She didn't wanna bring you in. She didn't feel that you would resonate with her audience." And let's just say it was a middle-aged white guy audience, right? And here I am, young black chick, combat pilot, police officer, and they're like bookkeepers or accountants or CPAs or something
Right.
like that, right? And he said, "Look, if you wanna go safe, go this route. If you wanna go, you know, little teeth, little edgy, but really drive the message home, you'll really wanna book Vernice." So, she books me, brings me in, I speak. I didn't know any of this, right, until later. She comes up
Okay.
to me after the event, and it's a black woman did
Ooh,
not want to book me.
goodness gracious sakes alive.
And she said, "V," 'cause all my friends call me V, right?
That's
She
right,
said,
V.
"I'll be honest, I didn't wanna book you. I really didn't think you resonated with our audience, and you were hands down the best speaker. I am so glad that he talked me into booking you."
Yeah.
And I was grateful in that moment, and I knew I'd blown the doors off for them, and it reminded me in that moment that, wow, I still have my hurdles and challenges of getting people to think outside the box, outside the cockpit, right? Of just my package. Oh, we could put her in front of women, or we could put her in front of black people, or,
People of color or
right.
yeah.
It's like I'm not just for Black History Month and Women's History Month. And when people actually hear the story, right, the keynote, they see it's not all about war and combat, right? I have a couple stories, and things are really built around engagement and overcoming the challenges and
Yeah.
obstacles and
Yeah.
accomplishing the mission, and
Yeah.
just the things in my background, right, in my history, um, give me colorful stories to
Yeah.
highlight how I was able to do that, and principles that I believe people can use to accomplish the same thing,
Yeah. Pun intended, by the way, colorful stories.
right? Yeah,
There's a couple of things to unpack there, but one of the things is, as a curator, right? Okay, somebody who's matching up mood, industry, audience, messaging, initiatives, who they've had in the past, what they're kind of conditioned to, what's their appetite for going off of what their past has said. I deal with a committee, I deal with decision makers who bring forth their own personal taste or their own concerns and considerations, which often get in the way of what's going to serve the audience, what's going to serve the attendees, and what's going to serve a message being provided that's going to make that difference. And when a meeting professional can stand in a place where they say, hey, this is what we're looking for, and this is what a home run, a grand slam, this is what it would look like. And if you can be, I'll just say it, colorblind, gender blind, orientation blind, whatever it is, and say, okay, now you also have to take into consideration where the appetite is. Certain energies really aren't a match and don't work.
right, right, true,
And that's just, or certain styles, let's say. But that has nothing to do with message, and that has nothing to do with an approach. And I just, so often, if you have a meeting where there's 1,000 in attendee and you have one gatekeeper who's imposing their filter, it's such a constraint. And so I, in a loving and appealing way, want to make a little fissure in that and just say, hey, look, would you be opposed to taking a look? Let's get on the phone. It's just a 10-minute conversation or less. You're going to know right away. No harm, no foul. But it could open up a whole new world. And there's where you're the trailblazer and the badass. Because that woman, who ironically was a Black woman, African American woman, was a gatekeeper for these middle-aged, golf shirt, kind of maybe red stater Bible belters. Let's call it what it is. And lo and behold, her words, you were the best speaker we've ever had.
yeah,
And it was because the message, not because you just enumerate,
right,
I'm Black, I'm a woman, I'm this, I'm that. You know, am I,
because
am I,
that's not
am I
even the
preaching
story.
am I preaching to the preacher?
Yeah, right. Yeah, because I'm like, that's not even the story, right? That's part of the story. And when you think about it, there's just fun stuff. Who doesn't like a cop story? Who doesn't like a combat story? Who doesn't like, the different things, there I was, right? Entrepreneurial stories now. Having a successful seven-figure business, which I don't talk about having the successful seven-figure business. What I talk about is how I've been successful in business, how I had to innovate in business, how I had to navigate my own challenges and obstacles in business. What happened to me when COVID hit, and I saw every single keynote as far as the eye could see, my whole pipeline of business completely disappear. How did I navigate that moment? And everybody can resonate in this moment because we all went through it together. We all have our COVID story.
Yeah, and COVID,
Right.
it sounds like a story I once heard from a speaker who's very successful, who was kind of out of fuel almost, and kind of out of ammunition almost, and was on a mission to take care of our people on the ground.
Was a
And
little on autopilot, right? A
yeah,
little on autopilot, and the biggest disruptor, right,
yeah.
came along.
I
Yeah.
mean, it gives me goosebumps because those kind of things, happen. And saying, "Hey, this is me, and this is what I've accomplished," not as being braggadocious, but to the audience, you can too. And here's the through line from my father getting me on a horse as a 4-year-old
Yep.
all the way through, and
Yep.
your failures, the stresses and messes about
Right.
what was it in part of your military training where you first time through, no, second time through, no. And again, I mean, those, it's not just like, oh my God, I'm amazing and da 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 da. It's all the stresses and all the messes.
Right.
And I think that our tribe can really relate to that. I want to shift gears a little bit, if that's okay. I
Mhm.
want to talk about the future. I could be wrong, but I think your new book, from what I remember when we were together last, The Gutsy Move. Is that right?
It's either the gutsy move or the gutsy executive. Those are my working titles. Hopefully, the
Okay.
publisher doesn't want to really
Right.
change that too much because I like it.
Somebody else might have a say in that. Can you share a little bit, take us under the hood there a little bit about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I looked back at my success, one of my coaches said, "What has contributed to your quantum leap?" And I said, "Well, definitely leadership, had some coaching framework, and there's this thing around I took a risk or faith, or I was like, no, it's a little different." And I went back to my room and I was talking to my roommate, and she was talking about something in her business, and she said, "Oh, I don't know if I want to do this or this." And it's like, girl, just do it. Sometimes you just got to make a gutsy move. I said,
Mm,
the gutsy move. It takes guts to do it. And I walk outside and I run into another friend. I said, I got it. It's the gutsy move. It takes guts to do it. She's like, oh, I love it. It has a double meaning. In your gut, you know it's right. And it
yeah,
takes guts. I was like, oh my God. Right. And that's what it became. The gutsy move. In your gut, you know it's right. It takes guts to do it. But
yeah,
here's the catch, Seth. You gotta take action, right?
yeah,
If we had the best mission plan, the best flight plan, but we didn't go out and execute, the Marines and soldiers on the ground would have been left out to dry, right? We had to take action, no matter how messy the plan was. That was the catch. So
yeah.
it's all about doing it because the best plan means nothing if you don't take action,
Right.
right? And our
Well said.
CEOs of today, I like to say they're not data analysts, even though they are, right? They are. They have to analyze the data, but that's not why they were put in the position of CEO. They were put in the position of CEO for their leadership instinct, their gut instinct, that when they see all the data, and sometimes the empirical data isn't what's going to give us the best outcome. It's that leadership gut instinct,
Right.
right? We
Right.
get the data, then we process it in here, and then we take action out there.
Yeah. And what I'm present to is when you got the gutsy move, it resonated for you
Mhm.
and you were sold
Mhm.
on it, and you were able to own it with excitement and enthusiasm and authenticity, which
Yeah.
then spreads out. And like you said, you can have a plan, but if you don't have action, and at the beginning of our conversation, that's what I was asking. The plan, it might be drawn from inspiration and
Right.
possibility. And
Right.
then you've got to deploy it, you've got to execute it. And sometimes as a human, we get discouraged, we get detoured, there's a breakdown, there's something that
Yeah.
isn't fulfilled or completed. And that belief, that preparation, that teamwork, all those aspects of what you talk about to overcome those and stay on focus. But I had shared this with you. We had done a little bit via text because I'm a language guy and I love words and I love these big concepts. You
Mhm.
know, the first, and I learned this from a speaker who's more of a physician, neurologist, but the first nervous system in our body was in the stomach,
That's
was in
right.
our gut.
That's right. That's right.
And
And I'm going to be bringing in the science, right, of the gut and the research because we're commissioning a research study on guts, confidence, bold moves, right? On layered on top of what my principles are and the case studies that I talk about in the book. So it's not going to be a memoirish thing. It's really going to be a roadmap in this day and age of unprecedented times. I mean, we hear that every other second, right? This is
we hear it,
unprecedented.
we
This is
hear it in an
unprecedented.
unprecedented amount.
Right, right. So people want to know, how can I navigate in the best way at this time? And people are so used to not using their gut, right? It's like things have been the same for a long time with healthcare until the Affordable Health Care Act and different things, came along. And real estate's been shaken up, banking's been shaken up. I mean, everything has been shaken up.
Education, yeah.
But what do
And
we have to fall back on?
right, your gut. And I would take the case that in the AI and like you were saying, CEOs that are like so dependent on data, which it's important to be informed.
Absolutely.
But then what are you going to take the body of your experience that an AI bot, even if they've tracked every written and spoken word and message and email and WhatsApp and and podcast you've been on, they're still not going to be able to incorporate and inhabit that gut
That's
and
right.
that sensibility that you speak to. I want to put in my pre-order Amazon right now for the book, but I want a signed copy
Right?
now.
You got
Okay.
it. You got it. You got it. And when like if I just add one real quick thing,
Yeah.
AI and deep fake technology, right? I mean, the world is becoming very interesting. And just because we see the data, we're gonna have to decide, are we making the right call?
That's right. That's right. Because I call it it's hidden from our view. Some have used the phrase "you don't know what you don't know," or it's unconcealed, or it's concealed.
Right.
And then how do you unconceal it? Well, I don't know. That's why you have your ground crew, your tribe. You
Right.
need to be informed by not just this restrictive data, which it's a map.
Right.
But when you're flying and you went in on that,
Right.
you did your first pass around. You captured some data points that weren't in the data, right?
That's correct. That's what
Yeah,
we didn't know until we got there.
right, right. I mean,
That's
you
right.
were well informed of some distances and some altitudes and what they spoke to you on, but until you got there, you didn't have the whole picture.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Just like a police officer coming on scene. The dispatcher can only give you so much information. Right.
It's such a rich conversation. V, we're not done yet. I want to completely shift gears. We've shared very briefly some stories about our children. What's the most important lesson you want your daughter Noah to learn from you?
Oh, man.
In 6,000 words or less. Okay.
Yeah.
So just kind of moving,
What I want for her most is, I mean, what does every parent want? For her to have an amazing life. And I believe for her to do that, it's not being a follower, right? It's being a leader, but it's being a leader of you. And
Mm,
how do you show up in honesty, integrity, right? I mean, if you have honesty and integrity, the rest can fall into place.
yeah. You literally read my mind. Literally.
Yep.
Well,
That's what I want for her. I want her to be her. I don't want her to feel pressured by social media and influencers and all this stuff to to be something she's not or to do something she doesn't want to do, right? What's her definition of success? What's her definition of an epic, amazing, juicy life? And
Yeah.
who cares about the judgment of other people? And I'll be honest, my mom, she cared about what everybody thought. And she was a keep up with the Joneses kind of person,
Mm,
right? And I became the exact opposite. Like I cut my hair and
right.
ride a motorcycle and I did my horses and I played in the band and people call me a band geek. I didn't care. I did
Right.
in the Memphis Youth Symphony and went to school on a partial music scholarship, right? I mean, I didn't care what people thought so much. And it's not that I went out to prove people wrong. I didn't. It's just, it was like, okay, yeah, but what do I want? Right?
Yeah.
I wanted to be a police officer. Oh, that's dangerous. I was like, yeah, I know, but it's going to be so fun. Oh, I
Yeah.
want to be a Marine. Oh, but how do they treat women? My dad did not want me to be a Marine. He said, 3 tours of Vietnam, right? This guy. He said, I saw how they treated women. And I don't want my baby being treated that way.
Mm. And it's understandable, right?
Yeah.
But you
Yeah.
have a guiding principle, and we're in a new age, and we're in a new paradigm, we're in a new century, and there's new possibilities. So,
We all want to
I
save people.
yeah,
Right? We wanna keep people safe, but that's not how we win in life. It's going through the tough parts and coming out stronger on the other side. I
yeah,
like to say the strength is the struggle. The
yeah,
strength is in the struggle.
yeah. My 3 daughters, I tell them all the time, we wake up in the morning, I open the door and I say, "Today's gonna be a great day." And they're like, "Okay," they're barely up. And then I say, "Life is," and I
Yeah.
open the curtains and I turn around and I'm waiting for them and they say, "An adventure." And in simplest terms, and if you ask me this question in 10 minutes or in 10 days, it'll probably be different. But with you right now, V, what I want them is to not have a lid on their expression in what they want to do in their life,
Right,
period. That
right,
it be full possibility, pure
right,
possibility,
right.
full stop. And it could be, in any realm or domain that they want, but
Right.
there's no lid.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting because I never thought about being a pilot. Never. And my battle buddy, for those who've heard my keynote, they've heard me talk about this story, but my battle buddy was a young white female on an aviation contract in the Army, right? I was in Army Reserves. I wanted nothing to do with aviation. I even said to her, after she begged if we can go to the aviation tent, after I'd looked at everything sniper platoon, Delta Force, Special Forces, she said, Armour, can we please go to the aviation tent now?
Okay.
Fine. People don't even fly. Right,
Right.
right. Isn't that true? Bessie Coleman, Willa Brown, that's Tuskegee Airmen, right?
Yeah.
The legacy is huge. That's why diversity, inclusion, belonging, those are not buzzwords to me. No,
Right.
it's very real. We walked into that tent and I saw a black woman in a flight suit. I was like, what? And it blew my mind. Planted a strong seed. Like a hot summer day, 5 minutes in 1994 completely changed my life.
Yeah.
Put me in sharing this very same breath with you. So when I think of representation and diversity and belonging, like I never wanted to be one of the guys. Never wanted to be one of the guys. I absolutely wanted to be part of the team. And that's the difference,
Yeah. And
right?
it's such a subtle but important and immense difference.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, V, we've come close to the end. We're going to shift gears one last time here. Are you ready? This is a part, it's a
I'll
little bit
get
more
ready. I
light.
stay ready.
Stay ready. Here we go. It's a lighthearted part. We're going to finish on what I call 20
Yes.
questions. It's technically not 20 questions. These are short, if not one word answers or
Yes.
brief answers where you do a quick kind of word association response.
It's my table topics. I'm ready.
What's the most exciting thing about you that we wouldn't learn from reading your resume?
I love sushi.
Chocolate or vanilla? Ice
Chocolate.
cream. Chocolate. Okay.
Anything. Chocolate, anything.
5-star beach resort or log cabin up in the mountains for
5-star beach
vacation?
resort all day long.
5-star beach report all day, every
Done enough
day of the
money.
week. Was there a song you listened to that got you pumped up before you trained or went into combat or anything?
Yes, lots of songs, but one that I just really love, Jill Scott, "Living Life Like It's Golden."
Oof. Why
Yeah.
does that not surprise me for 1 second? What was the better view from your helicopter? Sunrise or sunset?
Oh, that's a good one. I'm gonna say sunrise because
Huh?
it's like a new day, new opportunity.
Yeah. Well,
Sunset, though, it's like you're riding into the sunset, the mission's done, it was good, and you're headed home. So
we
they're
could
both
call it a tie.
yeah, that's a
All
tie.
right. We'll
That's a
call
tie.
that one an official tie with
That's a
no
tie.
overtime. What surprised you most about your tour in Iraq?
Mm, how hard it was.
Mm,
I knew it'd be
yeah.
hard, but it was hard.
Mm. What's your favorite way to relax?
Now, laying in bed on a Saturday morning, hanging out with my daughter, talking,
Yeah,
figuring out what she thinks about life.
that's beautiful. If you have a bucket list and part of it is travel, what country is next on your travel bucket list?
So I'd love to go to Ibiza or the
Mm.
Maldives. Like, yeah, this is some touristy stuff, but like the little hut over the water, that's gonna be fun. And I absolutely wanna do an African safari. Have not
Oh,
done it yet, wanna take my girls on that.
get in there.
Go
Get
get
in
me.
there. It is unbelievable. I've had the great fortune of doing it. 2010, I went to the World Cup in South Africa, and it was just, we went to Kruger Park. We saw the Big Five. It was just
Yeah,
life changing.
yeah.
So we've come to the end here. And I just thank you, V. Really, your magnanimous, generous spirit, uh, great storytelling, fun, unemployed comedian. Um,
Always working on my skit. Always working on my
yeah,
skit.
and just always willing to be part of the team. I thank you so much, and I know our listeners are better off for it. And for our listeners, thank you for being part of the tribe and being part of the crew. And thank you for joining us. I know you'll be smarter for it. And stay tuned in for our next episode of the Keynote Curators podcast.
All right. I appreciate you, Seth. It was an honor. Thank you.
Thank you.